Let me wait until everybody sits down. Get started off. Yeah, I'll wait a minute. Go ahead. I'll get this started. I'm going to start this afternoon by, first of all, I've been introduced, so I don't have to do that, but I'd like to tell you exactly what some of this, what you're going to be hearing are really part of several different lectures. In fact, we have a series of 6, and one is on Eastern and Western music and comparisons of the two. One is on Armenian instruments, which is the bulk of the talk I'll be giving today. And one is on dance. You will see part of that. And we're also going to have a live dancer here, I guess. One is on Armenian song, and one is on classical music. Now, Armenian classical music. We'll be talking quite a bit about instruments because I have some to show you here, except unfortunately I don't have them all. Usually when I do the instrument lecture, I usually have about 5 musicians with me who play the different instruments. But we understand the budget is too small for such a thing, so it's really not a matter of just the budget, but it's a time element. It's very hard to get anyone to come during the day because usually most of them work. But I'm going to give you just a little bit of everything today. And if you have any questions, well, I make this very informal because it's not I don't picture this as being too much of a formal lecture. So ask me questions as we go along. Now let's talk a little bit about Eastern and Western music. One of the big prime beefs that I have, that I've been working on, and many people, of course, have been also concerned with this, is the acceptance of Eastern music by Western countries. In the last 40 years, probably, there's been more acceptance, especially in the last 20-25 years, due to the efforts of certain composers and because of lines of communications. I mean, people are traveling to the East. There's more of an ethnic awareness in the country, especially in the United States today. A lot. Can we close the door? I think it's kind of distracting. But I don't see Eastern, aside from political and socioeconomic lines, I mean, I don't see Eastern and Western music really being separate that much, as being part of two different faces of the same coin. And most of this has been borne out by the music that's been played and written by such men as Chitjian. You probably know him as being the most famous Armenian composer. But there are quite a few other ones. There are Russian composers, Georgian composers. You've heard of the great choreographer Balanchine. Well, he has a brother in Georgia whose name is Balanchevadze, who's one of the great composers of Georgia. Did you know that? No. He is one of the greatest, I guess, choreographers in the world today, George Balanchine. He teaches at Juilliard. And there's quite a bit going on with interaction between musicians and music. But one of the prime problems has always been with music and acceptance of one over the other is really conditioning. Now, for most of us, myself, I'm going to have to pull myself out of this, and a lot of the Armenian teachers. How many Armenian teachers do that? Well, Armenian American people who have been exposed to both cultures kind of don't fit particularly into any one of the categories. They fit into both categories because we've been nurtured on one culture, and then we've come to this country and we've learned to accept and develop in another culture. But Western culture, for instance, for the most part, has been weaned on and conditioned for the past 300 years, since the time of Bach, for instance, on the 7-step diatonic scale, which, as you know, you're all familiar with it. Now, mostly all of the music that you hear for the past 300 years fits into, or is made up of, basically these 7 notes. It's a combination of these notes, a variation of these notes, but basically it is made up of these 7 notes. And whether you know it or not, for these past 300 years, you've been conditioned continuously to hearing exactly these 7 notes in different proportions, but you always hear them, whether you hear them directly or indirectly, you always hear them in one unit. Now, psychologically, it's been having a great effect. Music, we know it has a great psychological effect in many different ways. It can change your heart rate, it's been proven. You can sweat, you can laugh, you can cry, you can do anything, and depending on how the music is played and how it's perceived. Let me show you a different example, a basic example of psychology in music. If you take any basic note, for instance, let's take this particular note. This note happens to be a B. And does this note mean anything to most of you? And does it do anything for you? If I just play it? That's annoying. Does it do anything basically for you? Does it make you want to do anything? No. Okay, now, if we take this particular note and we put it in sequence with a group of other notes, something extraordinary happens. And listen to it. What does it want to do? It's got to finish. It wants to what? It wants to resolve. See, by itself, it's totally meaningless. It's just a note out in the clear blue sky. But any note can be put into this situation. And it's a very, very strong urge to finish that scale. And that urge, this little half step, which is called the leading tone, has been one of the prime, dominant psychological factors in Western music. Now, if you imagine sitting and listening to a concert and the pianist is playing, let's say, and he walks off. What happens? You want to drag him back? To do what? You find it finished. Well, so you see, just by arrangement and conditioning of all over these past 300 years, what's happened? You've been conditioned to hear that. And you want to hear it. There's no way out of this thing. Now we're in contemporary music, of course, we're trying to move out of this range, out of key centers, out of this type of entrapment. Now, Eastern music also has the same effect. Now, they're just as liable for all these things. When you listen to Eastern music, without this particular interval, which is technically called the augmented second, you have the same problems. For instance, if you listen to this. If you don't have that little interval of the augmented second, it's not quite Eastern, it's not quite Armenian. For instance, for us very specifically, if I were to play without that, it sounds quite different, doesn't it? So we're conditioned just as much to this augmented second, for instance, as Westerners are conditioned to the leading tone, which finishes the diatonic scale. These particular things have an enormous effect as to why a lot of the music has not been accepted by the West and East, because this is how they're different. They are conditioned to the point where you must be reconditioned to be able to accept a lot of these things. To many people, some of these augmented second, for instance, if you've studied harmony, have any of you had music courses before? You must have come across when you study harmony that the augmented second is never to be written. If you look at Bach's music, in none of his music, in any of his music, will you ever find that interval. That was forbidden completely. It was forbidden because, first of all, the reason it was given that it was very difficult to sing. Well, I know it's not very difficult to sing. We have a singer here that sings it all the time. Now, it cannot be difficult to sing, but for someone, at some point in history, it was difficult to sing, and it was conditioned in this way, and so forth, and continued in that direction. Today, we're trying to get away from these type of things. But music still has an enormous psychological bearing on everyone in every way. Harmony, rhythm, all these things contribute to a very basic psychological development you, of life itself, you see. So harmony in itself, for instance, is the grammar of music. You know, let me give you a little example of how harmony might function. If you take a note, just a melody on one note like this, and you harmonize them in several different ways, you're going to get several different characterizations out of it. For instance, or if you put it in a minor, same melody, but it makes it sound quite different. You can make it sound even jazzy if you wish. But harmony does these things. So music plays a great deal psychologically on us in our daily lives. This is one of the problems. Now, in one of our lectures, we cover this thing from point to point. I'm trying to skip around to get to that. But I'm going to, if there's any question, no questions on that particular part of it, I'm going to jump over to instruments because we only have a certain amount of time to go across. Armenian instruments are basically three types: woodwinds, strings, and percussion. We have no brass instruments. They use brass instruments today, modern brass instruments, but folk instruments are basically woodwinds, percussion, and strings. I'm going to start out with the woodwinds and show you the three different types. This particular woodwind instrument is the predecessor of the oboe. And if you can see here, it's a conical shaped instrument, which means that as you go higher, it gets softer. As you go lower, it has the tendency to get much louder. And it has a double reed, which I'll show you here in just a second, on a metal base, very small reed that is put on here in play. Now, those of you must have all seen something similar to this. What does modern instrument resemble? No, the oboe. The oboe is the only one that has a double reed like this with in a conical shape, and also has a very interesting tuning device, which is this little peg here, and it goes inside here. As the what we do is you wet this so that the wood expands, and you press it in here, and if it's flat, why you press it in further, and if it's sharp, you pull it out a little bit, so you are able to tune this instrument. It's a very ancient instrument. It's called a zurna. For it's a very difficult instrument to play. First of all, it takes an enormous amount of time to get the reed ready to play, and it is an extraordinarily loud instrument. I don't play this particular instrument yet, but these are usually played in pairs, and two of these were played at the Shrine Auditorium, and most of you know how massive that place is, without microphones. And you could hear it just like you were from the back, you could hear it just as well as you were standing right there at the stage. Enormously loud instrument, usually played in the outside. I doubt very much this played in the inside of a house, but they're used on concert stages quite a bit. More primitive dances are played on this rather than the more sophisticated folk dances. But it is a very interesting instrument in that also it does cover 2 octaves. Now, some of you, those of you who know about music, you know what an octave is. It's 8 notes. This can go up to 16 notes. And it's done through the process of overtone playing. I don't want to go into that now, but it does cover 2 octaves, and it's a very unique type of instrument. The more basic instrument, and probably the first one, is this flute type instrument, which we call a tutak. Or a shvit. I don't know if you exactly want which way to spell it, but I'm sure that's about as close as we can come to it. It's an interesting instrument. They come in several different sizes, so you can play it in different keys. They come about 5, 6, 7 different sizes. If you see different musicians playing them, when they have to, for instance, accompany a singer, they have several of them there. So whatever key she's going to be singing in, they pick out that particular instrument and play it. That way they don't have to transpose. this is a little bit more advanced one than this is much more primitive one. You can kind of pass it around and take a look. This is made out of bamboo, and this is made out of hardwood. And it has a little tuning fork, a tuning device up here, which is, by pushing it up and down, you can get, maybe about a quarter tone. I tried to tune it to this piano here, slightly off still on it, but it can give you almost 3 octaves on this. I'm going to show you this is the lower range, mid-range, and the upper. You can only get about 4 or 5 notes up at the top there. But it's quite a versatile instrument, see. Mostly, you know that we have, for instance, clarinets, modern clarinets, and other instruments, and we needed quite a bunch of keys on there to get all this. Most of the notes that are played in his flats and sharps and everything are half-hold. In other words, instead of playing one, so you hear 3 notes all with 1 finger. I'm going to play you a little bit of this. I brought along my own accompaniment. In fact, I just did it right before you came. So I accompanied myself on the piano a little bit. I hope you'll be able to hear it. It's very difficult to play because you can't hear most of what's going on in there. But usually we have the musicians play along with this, so it sounds quite different. So that is the tuta, or the shvei. Then we have the most popular Armenian woodwind instrument, and that's called a duduk. D-U-D-U-K. It's made out of rosewood, usually, or hard walnut, and it's tuned on a Mixolydian scale, which is we have several different types of scales that are used in Armenian music. This particular one is tuned to that, and it uses a bamboo mouthpiece. Now this is one solid piece, which has been shaped down into the shape that it's in. It's not two pieces stuck together. It's one solid piece. It's been shaped down to this shape, and then it's carved and shaped for weeks at a time. Then it's played and then shaved again, played and shaved again, until they finally get it exactly in tune with what they want. And also has a little fishing line that's usually wound around here. It's wet like this and put in here. It also has a little tuning knob that's fit right on top here, and now it's difficult to tune. These are usually played in pairs. One person holds a pedal point, which is called a damp. The damp, which is the pedal point, and usually is done, very interesting situation, because these people are experts in just doing that. Usually in Armenia, the damkash, which is the person who holds the pedal point, usually is a damkash for years to a master player, and then he graduates and becomes a master player. Now, the man who holds the pedal point usually holds 1 to 2 notes to accompany the soloist. The trick is never to stop playing, and it's done through a process called circular breathing. They fill up the lower cavity while they're blowing out from the upper cavity, and then they suck in air through the nose at the same time, and are able to close off the mouth chamber in order to fill up air again. And they keep this going, circular breathing constantly. I've asked how it's done there, and they've showed me, and if you want to try it, you can do it too. You take a straw and you put it in a glass of water, and you constantly blow into it, a very thin stream of air, and at the same time as you're blowing in, you try to suck in air through your nostrils. Now, if you get water up here, you're doing it wrong. So, I haven't quite mastered that yet, but they can go on literally for hours holding the same note. They have contests there, I heard, that, you know, that they're going for 2-3 hours to see who can hold on long. And if you take a look at some of these people, they have extraordinary neck muscles, just like almost like our own football players, linebackers, you know, to have these heavy neck muscles. And they need that in order to be able to push in and out the diaphragm here, to be able to push the air in and out and be able to constantly fill the chamber. Now, this accompanies the soloist. Now, since I don't have an accompanist with me, I also have an accompaniment on the tape recorder here. Except that occasionally you will hear this stop. That's when I'm taking a breath. So I couldn't let it keep it. Most of the time when they're playing these things, they sit there with it in their mouths like lollipops, you know, in order to play it. So if you excuse me a minute here.
Is that the instrument the shepherds play?
No, usually the shepherds are playing this one up here. This is the one that you see most of.
Where is this?
This comes from the different villages, and from Gyumri mostly. It's a village in northern Armenia called Leninagan today. From those areas there, and northern parts of Armenia down towards Georgia. And it's used now primarily in villages and in concert halls quite a bit. They're used in pairs and threes and fours, and they play total harmony and everything with this. There was a group that came here, which you will see here, that had a 15-piece group. It was part of the dance group. And they used 4 of these at one time, so you could hear a full harmony of playing going on. So anyway, it is a very delicate instrument, and it's a very expressive instrument, and it takes a long time to learn to play these things. Also, you need to continuously keep pampering the instrument, because it's got to be properly wet, it's got to be properly played constantly. If you don't play it for quite a while, the different parts of it begin to, the mouthpiece begins to stick, and it's very difficult to pry it apart. After playing it and getting it wet, and it's got to become very supple. Then it opens up and plays much better. But it is a very expressive instrument, and you will hear it in the film a little bit, the different dances of how this instrument is played. Now, those are the 3 basic woodwind instruments. The basic percussion instrument that we have is this drum here, which is called the dahol, and it's a cylindrical instrument with 2 heads, usually sheepskin. Quite a bit of the time, they used to use fish skin on here. The reason they use fish skin, it's not susceptible to weather or heat or cold, but sheepskin is. And it's got to be constantly kept warm, otherwise it loosens down. It has a series of ropes that are put in the different patterns here, and a rope is stitched all the way across here. By pulling this rope down, you tune the instrument and make it sound higher. By pulling it the opposite direction, it loosens the heads and makes it sound lower. You can get several different types of sounds out of this. They are played either with the full hand or the fingers, just the fingers. By playing on the inside, on either side, you get 2 different sounds: the bass note and then the treble note, which comes here. You can play it with the fingers. Good experts will do rolls with their fingers and everything else. I'm not a drummer, but just to give you a thing. And it gives you quite a variety of different sounds. Played, for instance, with the full hand. Let me see which. Usually accompanying a singer, they will use, or very pianissimo passages with their fingers, otherwise. Without stopping, don't ask me to do it, I can't, and get a different sound. And they twist it right here by bringing it up here without missing a beat, and continuing. We have a fellow that does that here. We couldn't bring him today, but he's one of the regular parts of the lecture. The other drum that is used is a more ancient drum, and unfortunately we had an accident with it. There's a piece of skin that goes on here too. Well, I'm going to have to reskin this pretty soon, but this is the one that used to always use fish skin, because these are much more susceptible to weather. And of course you can see what this is a predecessor of, the modern tambourine. They come in various different sizes. They come in large sizes to very small sizes like this. And so experts on these can play 3 or 4 of them at a time. They toss them around, juggle them, and play them at the same time. Armenians have used this for quite a time, but I don't think that this is indigenous to Armenia itself. I think it's more indigenous to the general area of the Middle East. But you will see pictures and in different books, if you look up some of these things, you'll see that different countries have been using these. For instance, this particular one, which we call the zurna in Armenian. By the way, zurna in Armenian, the name of this instrument is also used as a derogatory term for a child who is too noisy, you see, by usually parents, saying that you sound like the zurna. But there is a Czechoslovakian instrument called the zurla, which is identical to this one, but much larger. And the names are, of course, very, very much, coincidentally, they sound almost identical. So I don't particularly think that the Czechoslovakian instrument came first, because these instruments have been indigenous to the Armenian region there for much, much a longer period of time. But this drum, although used very extensively by Armenians, I personally doubt it is, but I haven't been able to check that out quite well. The only instrument that we have here today, we have several, of course, string instruments, quite a few, but only one I've been able to bring with me is an instrument called the kamancha. I showed us it's a very old instrument. I have a collection of many of these instruments, and this is one of my pride and joys. I have to have this completely restored. But this belonged to one of the great Armenian players. He died about 20 years ago. I was able to acquire this instrument. I won't even tell you for how much, but if you can see here, it has mother of pearl decoration. It has kind of an onion type belly, and it has a piece of skin that's stretched across the top of the instrument, and the soundboard that goes right through here. There's a sound peg that goes up here. There's a small bridge, which acts very much like a violin bridge does on a violin. And you have your fingerboard and your 4 pegs. The original kamanchas used to be only 3-string instruments. The modern day ones in the last 100 years have now 4 strings. They are tuned in fifths like a violin and played almost, fingered almost the same. The bow is going to be changed too, but the bow is usually just a supple piece of wood, and these hair, rather than being attached to a frog at the bottom like a violin bow does, has a piece of leather, which is not this here, a piece of leather which then you are able to control by pulling on the leather back and forth, and you can control the tension of the hair, which then gives you the different sounds that you can get from the from the kamancha, which are very much sound like very wailing type of sound. It's a very beautiful instrument. It's a very thin sounded instrument, but it's also an extraordinarily expressive instrument. Too bad we don't have the players to play this here for you, but I just wanted you to see that this is one of the instruments. The other instrument, which looks very much like a zither, which is called a kanon, is an instrument that looks like, most of you know what a zither looks like, a dulcimer type of thing. It's many strings to it, but it's not an Armenian instrument. It's basically an Egyptian instrument, but you will see it in Armenian orchestras, Armenian folk orchestras all over. And we have a master of that instrument here in Los Angeles. In fact, we've got 2 of them now. There's one that's recently come here. One of these days, if you have a chance to see our lecture with the full orchestra and everything, where we play all these instruments and demonstrate them, do so you can get to see and hear some of these instruments. Basically, this is all the instruments that I have brought here. I want you to hear also what we do with music. That is, we take how Armenian folk music, I'm going to have to sounds when it's put into Occidental terms, which means how it sounds with a symphony orchestra. Now I'm going to, is this record player work? I'm going to play you a piece here with two folk tunes on it. How do we turn this on? And these are two folk tunes that I orchestrated into a very large, elaborate orchestration. But they are basic Armenian folk tunes. And I want you to hear what they sound like when they're played with a symphony orchestra. here, it sounds, well, you didn't hear the original for you to be able to put it together, I mean, compare the two. But quite a bit of this is now being done in Armenia, where folk music is now being very much incorporated into Occidental music. But in Armenia, there's also a general movement today that's going towards contemporary music and into avant-garde music, and you find composers of, in fact, I think per capita, Armenia has more composers than any other country I know. We're a small country with maybe a couple hundred composers. And they're doing quite a bit of work over there. They're being recognized all over, mostly all over the Soviet Union. But some of them are beginning to get quite a bit of recognition outside of the Soviet Union. There's the Haratunian Trumpet Concerto, which is now very, very popular, even in the Midwest, here and back east, being played by many of the major orchestras. And it was written back in 1948 and it's just being discovered right now. I'm going to finish off today by showing you a little homemade movie. This is a movie of the Armenian dance group, which came from Armenia about 6-7 years ago. Were you there? About 7 years ago, and dance at the Shrine Auditorium. You will see several different types of dances here with different costumes and music. The only problem with this film is a friend of mine took this with his own home camera, and it has sound, by the way, to it. But he just shot sections of each one, so you'll be seeing one dance and getting into it, and suddenly you're in another one. So you'll have to excuse that part of the technology here. But it's still interesting enough to be able to see the film and be able to see the different types of dances that are done. If there are any questions, I'll take them now and then. Yes?
I don't want to sound stupid, but the music, you know, Armenian dancing into belly dancing also?
No. We have, see, that's one of the things I've been kind of fighting against. Belly dancing and things of that nature. First of all, those are not folk, that's not folk dancing. Secondly, you go to Armenia, you will never see it. None of it is done. It's not indigenous to us at all, you see. But since it's very much prevalent in the Middle East, and of course many, many Armenians live in the Middle East, you know, wherever you live, you assimilate part of that culture. And so if you go to nightclubs here where it says Armenian nightclub and you see a belly dancing, you quite normally think that that's Armenian dancing. It's not. And in fact, it has absolutely nothing to do with the type. What you will see up here is a type of dancing that's indigenous to Armenians. Yes?
What is that good in the doumbag?
The doumbag is not an Armenian drum, although you will see it used by Armenian bands, for instance, in different groups. Doumbag is basically an Arabic drum. In fact, I think its origin comes from Persia. It's not quite as versatile a drum as this particular one here, because you can only get certain sounds out of it. Now, in the recording you just heard, did you hear a drum being played in there? That was this particular drum being played, where I use certain Armenian instruments within the orchestra. I also made a recording in Beirut where I used the duduks and the shri and the Armenian drum, the davul, with a symphony orchestra. And I don't know if that record's available right now, but there were problems with its release at one time. So, but I think it's going to be available quite soon. Any other questions? The oud also is not Armenian, although we use it quite often. The oud is an Arabic instrument, basically. It is not an Armenian instrument. But in Armenia, you will find it. You will find it used. A lot of time, when in the United States, for instance, if you find the old-time Armenians, that is the people who've been here since the 20s, for instance, who came basically from Turkey, use the oud and the doumbag, you know, very much as was playing Armenian music on it, and that has become a standard almost here in this country, especially. But it is not. It is not one of our instruments, although it is used in Armenia. The oud, for instance, the oud in Turkey, the oud is it's an instrument that looks very much like the lute. And in fact, the name lute, I think, comes from that same word, oud, because if you take the words, now this is a theory, of course, la or la-ud, you see, and you D-A-M-P-H.
That's the technique.
Now, oh, the technique? Oh, it's circular breathing.
No, I mean, what is, like if polyphonic music or harmonic, what's the name for that phenomenon of having one low note with the other?
Well, it's basically monophonic music, you see. You have one note, which gives you a basis of harmony. And on top of that, you play, it's probably the most simple harmonic form you can find. Well, the most simple harmony that you have is two notes that are played together at the same time. So here you have a basis, a pedal point. It's another word for it. Pedal point is the word that you're looking for, probably. And on top of that, the melody is played, which gives you a harmonic basis. Because otherwise, if you have no pedal point, the harmonic basis may vary depending on how different people perceive that same note. Any other questions?
Yeah, I was wondering, when you played the musical scale and you distinguished what was Armenian, would you have the second one?
The Armenian?
Yeah. What
Augmented second.
The augmented second, yeah.
Yeah. Could you write that on the line? In other words, what does it look like note-wise? Is it what they call the seventh?
Well,
minor?
it's an interval. For instance, an interval from B flat to C sharp is an augmented second, and you see, and it's 3 half steps, basically a step and a half. All of the other scale motions are either half steps or whole steps. In in the minor scale, you have a step and a half. Now, in Baroque music, it's very interesting if you know anything about that, or some of you who are in music. They avoid this by going around it, going up the scale. You see, what they do is, instead of going this way, they do this. In other words, they go, let me show you a little bit. If this is the, here's the black key, that's B flat to C sharp. They come up here, instead of going to this black key and jumping over here, they come up here, they go to this one, to the white key, to the B, jump up to the C sharp, come to the D, and then play backwards and go to the B flat. They make a crisscross, which they term to be the melodic minor scale. See? Which technically that's what it is, the melodic minor scale, which I think is just a way of avoiding the augmented second. And precisely that scale was developed just to avoid that. Because, like I said, it's very interesting to find that in any of Baroque music, you will never find that particular interval.
That augmented is peculiarly Armenian, or
No,
you mean
no.
all that region?
That augmented is used, of course, it goes into quite a detailed thing to explain it, but it's where it's used that makes it more Armenian than anything else. At the end of the scale, for instance, there's a Russian augmented second too. Now, they use it at the beginning of the scale. See? Or this. And then they use the minor and major. It depends where the augmented second is used. Because if you go into modes, I don't want to get too technical, but if you go into modes, the different modes have this, for instance, the augmented second will wind up at a different place. And more indigenous to Armenians where this mode is used as a leading tone.
B flat.
Right. Well, it doesn't necessarily have to be B flat to C sharp.
mean-
But I'm saying if you,
The
once
end
it
of
was-
the scale.
it's at the end of the scale. And that makes it more Armenianish than anything else. You see, I don't want to go back 1,000 years in history and say that, find somebody else that's been using it, but so far as that I can figure out.
Is any Armenian music in the major key?
Oh yes, there are some. Very few, but there are some. Any other questions?
But some people say Armenian music is sad because it is in a minor key or in modes. Do you have any comments about that?
Yeah, there's a certain sadness to a minor key, and there's a certain happiness to a major key. Not necessarily that that's what it is, because we have so many gay, beautiful, vivid dances that are all in a minor key. There's a touch of sadness to it. I think that's also conditioning. I think that's perceived in the same way. Let me give you, using harmony in music, psychologically, you see, can give you so many different things. It's like the grammar of music, harmony. Let me give you an example here quickly. Let's take a sentence. John loves Mary, right? And let's assign it to 3 notes. John loves Mary. That's our melody, okay? If someone gave us those lyrics, you say John loves Mary. Now, those same 3 notes, you can do so many different things with by expressions, by use of harmony. For instance, if you want to make an exclamation, John loves Mary, a definite statement, use a major chord. See, it doesn't want to do anything but state it. It doesn't go anywhere, it doesn't feel sad or happy, does it? Right? Now, if you want to make it a question, you can use, for instance, a dominant 7th chord and make it a question. John loves Mary. See, what happens? Listen to it. Can you just leave it like that? No, you have to resolve it. So it needs an answer, right? Yes. The answer may be. But you say, John loves Mary. You can't just let it hang there. See, same 3 notes. I'm not changing the 3 notes. John loves Mary. Definitely. John loves Mary. You have to answer, right? Yes. Or, John loves Mary. Which makes it minor and makes it sad, negative. You see? Or you can make it even derogatory if you really want to, for instance, put a diminished chord into it. Yeah, you don't have to answer that one. You can do that both ways. But, like I say, you can use all of these different things. Harmony just by use of that. Composers use that all the time. So. He sits there and he says, now, what is John loves Mary? Should we make it definite? Should we make it sad? Should we make it happy? Should we make it a question? You can do all of that by harmony, you see. And, of course, there are many other means. Any other questions? Did you have a question?
Yes, was the recording that we heard from the Pasadena concert recently?
No. The recording that you heard was the same piece that was played at the Pasadena concert. But it wasn't that particular
Is
concert.
that recording out yet?
Yes, I have some here. Oh, the Pasadena one? That's the same recording. It's the same piece. In other words, the same orchestra recorded. We had it recorded for that concert.
Who arranged that piece?
I did. Are there any questions? Because I want to get to the film so you can take a look. And now, again, I warn you, it's not, perfectly Hollywood, this film, but it does give you an idea. Now, can I have a book or something to prop under here? Oh, wait, I'll try this. That's too good.
If we have a book, how many do you want?
Well, I can use these probably. Okay. In the middle of this, and because we want to continue, we have more treats for you here. We want to continue with a live performance now. We have a young lady that's going to dance for us, and she's right here. So we're going to, let me move this back.
Yeah, it's too bad that this was filmed. Yeah, I mean, we're lucky we got this. And we're lucky we had it, but it was the most exquisite, I think, dance. This is at the Shrine, I think?
Shrine of Prayer.
Yeah.
But their dresses were just
Didn't we?
They're for sale at my store.
Is it like velvet?
Yeah.
Different, they're different, all kinds of different materials. Do you have one here with you, or?
You know, I have to apologize because I went to the cleaners to pick it up yesterday and they can't find it.
Oh.
You're kidding?
No.
Soon.
Soon I have to make another one, so this is what I
All right.
But anyway, Denise, the reason I'm glad you brought this film because it fits right into questions you're asking. And, tell us more about your costume, because part of it when she had her costume on, she was telling us about how she made it, mix all the pieces to it, which you can still improvise. But she was the first person, which I heard just recently, that has been, she's taken upon her own to learn about the dance and to describe really the historical, the Armenian dance. And she's gone to Armenia, and so she's really actually taken upon herself to do a study of the Armenian dance, along with the costume, etc. And we will see you, right? You're going to dance for us, okay. And so you will see the movements that you saw up there. And you have to, I think for us, as an Armenian, where I've seen this dance all the time, and maybe a year or two ago I was at the Wilshire Ebel, and they had Armenian dance along with a lot of other ethnic groups. And I've heard in the back, I heard somebody say, that's a bit boring. It wasn't the belly dance. Right? They were expecting the belly dance. And, I thought, well, that's our fault because we're not telling people what the Armenian dance is. And so that, and then shortly after, when you hear the explanation, if you have a background to it, then you understand and appreciate it more. Denise Manudian, let me just show you. Right here.
Sarah, who was the dance troupe?
Edward.
Right here.
Edward.
It's the,
These Armenian state ensemble.
State,
yeah, it's the Armenian State Dance Ensemble.
But they had won an international award at Singapore.
Yeah, there's about 4 big dance groups over there. This is one of the better ones, and this is also more progressive. Some of these dances that look authentic, are really not. They're kind of, they go on to. But this one that we cut at, which is going to be a comical dance, we can look at it later if you want to say what. That is an authentic one.
The one that they did to Chitjian saber dance?
That's my man.
It didn't look authentic.
No, it wasn't. No.
Also a Russian dance.
But she had a great figure.
What you just saw is probably more than most Americans will ever get to see, because they wouldn't have heard about the company until after the company had left. The group that you saw on stage, the Armenian State Ensemble, did a representation of things that have been done in Armenia by Armenians, but that doesn't mean that it wasn't influenced by other peoples and by other musics that have passed through the land. What I'd like to show you is what I have learned that is typically Armenian. I have learned it from people who have come to this country. My parents are from Armenia. I was born here. From going to weddings and watching, from asking people. There isn't any place, any one place that you can find it written down, you must do 2 of these and 3 of these. There isn't any one person here in this country who is teaching a styling that has not been influenced by ballet or by music from other countries. The only place that you can actually learn from is from a person that's about over 60, I think.
No, he's 80.
About 80. And every now and then at a wedding or a picnic, someone will just pop up in front of you, and they may be really old and they can't walk, but you can see that movement. You can see the feel in their heart. You can see when they move their hand, they just place it exactly where they want to go, and they don't do anything else. It's very slow, it's very simple, but it comes from within the person, from what they're feeling at the time. The dances are done for either a joyous occasion, a wedding, a celebration of some type. It's not a type of dance like a swing might be here, where you just went someplace and decided to dance, or a group of people got together and decided to dance. That really wasn't typical in Armenia. People got together for some type of a family gathering. The first dance that I'm going to do for you today is called Zahke Punch. It is a dance of springtime, a dance of the flowers opening. It's usually done by a group of women representing the flowers. person, you can't feel a sense of choreography, but you can feel the sense of the slowness of the movement, of this moment where the flowers are opening, of this up and down, which is just, I don't know, it's really just a feeling. This is supposed to just be a feeling of nature and a feeling of about to happen. And then this is just the prettiness and the feeling of what spring is about. Women did this in the springtime. I have heard that they went not house to house, but within their family, family to family. And like Elliot said, that's a hearing. I don't know if it's true. I can't say how long ago they did it. But that's just one of the different reasons that I've heard that the dance was done. I learned this dance from a man by the name of Ruben Hovanessian. He studied in Egypt. He studied in Armenia. And he is the only person to do this particular dance in this styling. Every other person that I have seen do it completely different and do it in a way that is influenced by Persians, which just says that either that grouping of people was closer to Persia, or they moved to Persia, or something happened to change that dance from what it was 100 years ago to the way it is currently being done now. The things that you saw in the film are not dances that are currently done now. Those are dances that are being replicated from something that's long ago past. Now in this country, we are just as Armenians beginning to see the need to try to keep those pieces done the way they were without the influences of so many other peoples. Because of what has happened to our peoples, we're spread all over the world now. And we have a lot of those influences. We have Persian influence and Greek influence and Egyptian and the Armenians in Jerusalem and in Lebanon and in France and America. And so you see all these little changes, and the most important thing is to try and save it as it was, because it is now something of the past. And the only way that people here can do that is by learning it, by seeing it, by passing it on, and by understanding what the culture was and how it should be preserved as that. The dance that's coming up is a dance called Jelinek. It's a dance that is done. It's a dance that's done by a woman, usually done before she's gotten married, but it's not a bridal dance. It's something that's saying, I am now changing from a girl to a woman. And what she replicates in the dance are things that she will be doing here in life. the dance where she's doing this is looking out into the future. The parts where she's going by her eyes is putting on, not of makeup, but of beautifying herself as a woman, as now the wife of someone, because she's now representing not only her family, but she's representing the family of the man that she's marrying. The parts where I was down, going forward and back, is all parts of preparing a meal, of rolling, of sarma, of, did you talk about food at all?
Not yet.
Okay, of making the bread, which was a very, very important aspect. I'm really sorry that I couldn't wear a costume, because part of the feel, even as a dancer, part of the feel is when you feel the weight of 20 extra pounds of costume on you. But we will be doing a concert at the Wilshire Bell, where we will be doing an Armenian suite of dances, men and women, and other Middle Eastern material, Persian, Iranian, Azerbaijani, and Georgian. And if you come to our concert, you'll be able to see it in full costume with the full orchestra. It'll be May the 18th on Sunday afternoon.
How distinct are your hands?
Are mine?
Well, as far as Armenian, yeah. Do other people have it?
Oh, you mean other countries? Other countries, but they're a little bit different. Mine could be, okay, I can't say that my hand movements are exactly Armenian, because I've never had the opportunity to study from someone who also learned purely Armenian. And they are also influenced by, I do Persian dance, so I have a little bit of Persian style, whether I like it or not.
Well, what we saw in the film, in other words,
Yeah.
it's typical around the area?
Okay, what I have learned is that Georgian women are much straighter. They aren't as soft. They are just as graceful in walking as they try to keep their shoulders level. But yet their hands hang, and they show much more of a strength in whatever they do than an Armenian woman who might do that, who might be more graceful. Only because it's showing of strength. A woman can be stronger in Georgia than a woman in Armenia can. Azerbaijani women are up more and bounce a little bit more. So the hand movement, this type of a movement is basically the same. It's what you do with the rest of your body that goes along with that. In Azerbaijan, they might do a little bit more of a hip thing, a little bit more